Fort Myers resident, as well as being the fire chief for the City of Fort Myers Fire Department. And today we are here with an amazing panel of individuals that we're going to have a in-depth conversation. We're going to get a little bit uncomfortable. We're going to get a little bit intimate, but we're going to be authentic. And we are talking about policing, law enforcement, and the judicial system as a whole, and how it relates to people of color or even the Black community in Fort Myers. So that's who I am, but let's talk to this panel. Let's figure out who they are. If you guys just want to just kind of share who you are and just a little bit about yourself.
I'm Eddie Brown. I'm a sergeant with the Fort Myers Police Department. I grew up here in Fort Myers and enjoyed serving with the city of Fort Myers and doing what I do.
Amazing.
I'm Officer Yvetta Dominque with the Fort Myers Police Department. My official title is crime prevention. I wear many hats. I am community relations, community engagement, and youth relations. I've been with the police department for approximately 15 years.
Nice.
I'm Archie Hayward. I'm retired. I'm a lawyer by practice. I served as a county court judge, and I'm now living in this beautiful Lee County.
Yes, very nice.
Sergeant Campbell, Fort Myers Police Department. I'm a supervisor in our community relations division. That includes our school resource officers, our police athletic lead, our public housing officers, and our homeless outreach team.
Very nice. So definitely a validated, very knowledgeable panel that we have here today. So let's jump into it. Let's talk some stuff here. So when we start looking at policing and law enforcement or even the judicial system on the national level, you know, it's crazy right now, and the lack of trust and confidence maybe in those systems and those processes as a whole. How do you measure the national to what we see here locally? How would you compare those two?
Well, I will say this: we here in Fort Myers, we've made huge strides in terms of our community engagement. I've seen it firsthand since when Chief Diggs first arrived here. That was definitely a priority of his to get out and to bridge the gap with the community. We've had programs that have come a long way, like our police athletic league. That was something that was very, very important to Chief Diggs. You know, and the more I think about it, it's made a huge difference. And you know, we wouldn't be where we're at right now if it wasn't for him supporting that program. But that's just one of many initiatives that he was committed to. But like I said, as far as where we're at here in Fort Myers, we've come a long way, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Building trust is not something that happens overnight.
Right. Now, do you feel as though, or does the panel feel as though that for the local police department to be judged on a national scale, do we feel as though that's fair, or do we feel as though that you have to actually look at each agency differently, or how does that work? It's almost like if I go to Target, I'm not going to go to Target and judge Walmart, right? You know, so is that same hold true with policing?
I mean, it's only natural for the community or anybody in the community to judge law enforcement based on what they see on TV naturally. I mean, we sit inside of a museum and just think back, historically, it's always been some tension between law enforcement and people of color. So to not think that wouldn't happen today based on what we see, especially if it's have a racial dynamic to it, it's gonna come to territory. That's why we work hard, like Sergeant Campbell was saying, to bridge that gap. That's why we get out and try to engage with the community.
Right, build those relationships.
You have to, because they're a part of this just as much as we are. So,
definitely. So now, do you feel as though there's a stigma about law enforcement, you know, where, you know, you can't trust them, and if so, how do you combat that? How do you break that? I know, you know, Sergeant Campbell spoke to it a little bit, but really at a really fundamental or elementary level, how do you actually break that down? how to get rid of those historical biases that we spoke about?
I could say that honestly, 99% of our community trusts the police. They believe in us, they believe that we're doing the right thing, and it shows, you know? So when you say that stigma, how do we change that? We're doing it one day at a time, you know, engaging the community, making relationships, you know, having programs where we can educate the community on what's going on and being transparent. So changing that stigma is, you know, it's an ongoing thing. It's not going to change overnight. So, you know, and quite frankly, I believe that our community definitely sees that we are not the same. We are not like what they see on the news. And I believe that wholeheartedly.
Gotcha.
And also, I think we can't put that responsibility solely on the officers. I mean, we have officers that go out there and do their job every day. But in terms of changing that stigma, you know, that's a societal issue. We're at a point in our society where one officer's bad decisions can affect another.
Right.
And it shouldn't be that way. Unlike any other profession, that's the case. You know, but like I mentioned, that's a societal issue. When we get to the point where we can change that, then we'll be getting somewhere. But here in Fort Myers, all we can do is what we can control. You know,
Gotcha.
Our officers get out there and we try to engage the community, and we do the best job that we can.
Yeah, and from my perspective, you guys have done an amazing job as a police department, getting out and being engaged with the community. So as we transition, maybe, you know, talk about policing, I mean, maybe talk a little bit to that of the judicial system itself and that trust and or possibly even a lack of trust when it comes to people of color. What are some things that we can do to possibly bridge that gap and change some of that thought process?
Over the years, as a young attorney, I started out as a defense attorney with the Public Defender's Office, and then having my own practice, and then working for a nonprofit organization. You see different aspects of policing, as well as how people feel about the judicial process, in such that some people are there. They have a fear almost, and it's because they've not been involved with the policing or the judiciary, and so they're a little hesitant about, you know, being involved. Then you have people who have had experience, good or bad, and they feel one way or the other. But again, to combat that, it's knowledge and transparency is what is needed in regards to making sure people have an understanding of the judicial process. Most people know that people get arrested. They sometimes have to go to court, but they don't know the process.
Right.
And that has to be explained to them because it often gets confusing. And so again, education and transparency is the key to make sure that the public has a trust in the whole system. Policing is a part of it, but the judicial process encompasses every step and stage of the process. And it's good to have a good agency and good methods that are being used so that the public has confidence in the system.
Couldn't agree more. That's beautiful, beautiful words. So as we look at officers as a whole, so you all obviously are you know, officers of color, good-looking officers of color, I must say. How do you feel as far as your daily duties? Do you feel as though, as a officer of color, that you have other obstacles or challenges that maybe some other officer may not have to face? Do you feel as though that's something that you have to overcome?
Absolutely, yeah. Because again, as law enforcement officers, we all swore an oath to uphold the law. So first and foremost, that's what we have to do. Oftentimes, in the career field of law enforcement for an officer of color, you might have to point out something that a co-worker is doing that you might perceive as being culturally unbiased, or that may not fit, or that may be something that can be seen as culturally wrong.
Right.
And you got to speak out on it and call it out. Oftentimes, that can cause some conflict as far as your progression of your career. But that comes with the territory. This is what we signed up to do. However, also when we take off this uniform, we are just like every other person in the community. We shop in the community. Some of us are coaches. Some of us, go to church here in the community. I grew up here in this community.
Wow.
So oftentimes when you see people, you talk with them, but then there's that few that look at you with a different lens because, they might have some past experiences as far as distrust with the police. And so those are things that we have to continuously work on and be mindful of, especially as officers of color.
Gotcha.
Challenges that I've seen, just being a African American black female, and as an officer, for me, watching the news and seeing where young black men are being killed, and then hearing the uproar, you have your family members who feel like that is wrong, and then as an officer, you can kind of see where some of those things are justified, and or then you have to take off the uniform, like Sergeant Brown says, and you're like, you're a mother, you have brothers, you have fathers, you have different people out there that you're like, okay, I fear too. So being an officer, for me, being a female officer, being a mother, it's hard, and sometimes you gotta figure out where that balance is, and you feel like you're on an island all by yourself because you're like, am I the only one that's feeling this? Are my peers looking at me like, well, you can't feel that way too. You have to feel this way. But since I know that now, with the education that we've gotten within our police department, and the officers are able to have that empathy, they acknowledge, some of the wrongs that are happening in our community. And that's solely because of the education we've received through Chief Diggs coming here. So honestly, I don't feel that way anymore. I know that at some point, like even when I'm on social media, community is reaching out to me, my family reached out to me, even officers are reaching out saying, hold it down, it's going to be okay. So I am, at least I can say that I am blessed to be able to speak my truth.
That's
and
beautiful.
Feel how I feel.
That's beautiful. And Judge Hayward, maybe retired, from a standpoint of sitting on the bench, being a black man, did you feel as though maybe sometimes you were being judged on how you'd rule one way or another because of your race?
What I will tell you is people judge by what they see. So you have no idea what their perspective is, though. They may be looking at color, they may be looking at sex, they may be looking at, that person is from a certain area. Yeah. So you never know how you're being viewed, and people make opinions on what they perceive as their perspective or reality. But I know from my experiences in the past as in the system that as long as you strive to do what is right, no matter how people perceive you, then you have done what was asked of you. Because the attorneys have a positions, police officers have a position, judges have a positions, jurors have a position. This whole process works together, and everyone has to do the task that's asked of them to the best of their ability. And so no matter how someone else views you, you cannot use that as a reason not to do what's right.
That's powerful, to do what's right. That's powerful. So as we think about policing, judicial system, and things of that nature, what were some of the thoughts you guys had getting into the line of work that you're in, as far as all the many things, those guys are all talented, all the many things that you could have done? What brought you to law enforcement, to policing? What brought you there?
What you said.
That's a question that I think about a lot. When I'm stressed out and I sit back and what made me do this? But policing it may be one of the most undervalued professions there is.
Yeah.
It's challenging. It's challenging in a lot of different aspects.
Mm.
The stress it can bring on your family. It's just a lot that comes with it,
Yes.
to say the least. But policing provides an opportunity to make an impact. Because there's so many different ways you can make a positive impact as being a police officer. That was one of the things that attracted me to law enforcement. It's a job that's different every day. You're not gonna go. You can do something different every day. But for me, that's what brought me to law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons why I asked that question, we can continue to unpack that a little bit, but I wanted folks to understand the stresses that you guys have. Because you not only have the balances of everyday life, but you have the balances of your job and your career and political and societal stresses. All these things are colliding every day you punch in to do your job. And I think folks should realize that you all are human also. And you guys have things that you're trying just to do your job and keep the community safe. So
and you're held to a higher standard too. That's the key. And that's what makes it, can also make it difficult. You're always being watched. Everything you do will be scrutinized, especially when you're out there on the job. And nowadays, which I think is a good thing with body cameras and all the technology, you're even more watched. But like I said, I think that's a good thing. Because it can also show that officers can do the right things as well. It's not always just about when the officer makes a mistake or do something wrong. So there's pros and cons to that. But that's a completely different topic.
Yes. So you talk about impact. So you all being officers of color and Judge Hayward retired at the highest level of the justice system, that's impactful. Do you think your work and your sacrifices to be in this career have maybe possibly impacted others? And if so, how do you see that?
When I decided to be a police officer, I just wanted to put bad guys in jail. That's what it was. If you're a bad guy, you're going to jail.
Yeah.
But honestly, being here and working with kids and seeing what they go through, as adults, we don't listen to them, and since working with them, I've learned to speak their language. I've learned to listen and not, speak at them since I've been a police officer. And one of the things that, since Chief Diggs came here, he got tired of seeing young people constantly on that screen that have been, incarcerated over and over and over again. And he reached out and he says, what can we do to stop this? We got to stop, getting these guys and putting them in jail. We got to find an alternative. We need to find a way. And one of the things that he said was the Police Athletic League, we have to find a way to reach them. And in that time, we've done Know the Law. So we make it a point to teach the kids the law,
Wow.
We do a lot of different things like right from wrong and just educating them, positive interaction with law enforcement. How do you do that? What does it look like? Those are things that we teach our kids at the Police Athletic League. And for me, it's important to continue that. And one of the things, every time I had a conversation with Chief, I call his closing statement with me every single time is, don't forget why we do what we do, and do not, under no circumstance, stop. Push through. Let's continue to get these kids off the street. Every single moment. I remember the last conversation I'd had with him, that was his closing statement. Don't forget why you do what you do.
Right.
And that is to make sure that every kid in this city knows the law. Because a lot of our kids are getting incarcerated because they don't know simple trespass versus burglary. And they're getting, caught up in the system.
Right.
So that is what that my job now is to educate every young person in this community.
Right, and I think this would be a great time in this episode just to pay our respects to Chief Diggs, an amazing, amazing man, father, grandfather, officer, and impact player. He changed a culture and instituted so many wonderful things in the city of Fort Myers. So rest in peace, Chief Diggs. So as we get ready to end this conversation, here, we know the conversation is going to continue, right? I just want to ask this one question. If there's one thing that you could change, whether it be in policing or law enforcement or the judicial system, what would you change and why?
I would definitely try to change the makeup of every level of the system. As far as I strongly feel that police departments, as well as the county circuit court system, we should look like the community that we serve. That's part of the main issue that we have across the country. Like growing up, I didn't see that.
Right.
Now, being a sergeant with the Fort Myers Police Department, seeing that we just had an African American police chief at the same time having an African American fire chief.
It's crazy.
Like,
yeah.
I would have never thought that would ever happen.
Right.
I promise you, I would have never thought that would ever happen. So I think as far as getting people in positions, high positions like Judge Hayward and yourself and Chief Diggs in those high positions that look like us, and especially gentlemen that come from the community.
Yeah.
For me, again, that does wonders.
I love that change. So.
For me, I would love to see where, as a whole, when it comes to city government, the judicial system, law enforcement, all of us working together, not to, convict or continue to arrest our children. And, I want us to come together to find a solution on how we can educate them and teach them to do better, find another way that we can do that. So if we can all work together and not, one group take blame or push blame this way or whatever, we all work together. I feel like that would be an amazing change. That's what I would like to see, is all of us working together as a whole.
I love that. Judge Hayward?
I would say access to justice in this country and in our community. We have a lot of people who do not feel they have access to justice because of financial inability to afford representation or to get consideration for different things. And that can be done through the many different programs and just knowledge and making sure people are aware of the resources that are available, because certainly the Florida Bar tries to make sure that there is access to the judicial system, and so again, there are many resources out there that a lot of people don't know about. And if we educate them and let them know what's where, and make sure that like pro bono agencies or pro bono attorneys are available, they will be able to assist those people who would not feel like they have access to our judicial system.
Wow, definitely.
For me, I know it's wishful thinking, but I would try to change the culture for policing in general, nationwide. Try to get some uniformity there, get everyone on the same page. I think the culture gets to the root of why we have so many issues throughout the country. Bad culture is toxic. It's a lot of things, a lot of negative can come from bad culture. So changing the culture, getting everyone on the same page. I know it's a tough task, But that's the only way I can see some real change being brought on a national level, because here in Fort Myers, we've made huge strides for improving our culture. That was one of Chief Diggs' first initiatives. Like Sergeant Brown said, changing the mindset. That was what he brought.
Yes.
And like I said, we made some huge strides there, but there's still some work to do. And the thing is, as good as our culture can be within the Fort Myers Police Department, we can still be negatively impacted by a neighboring agency or one on the other side of the country, for that matter.
Yeah.
And we're judged by that.
Wow.
So we got to get everybody on the same page.
Yes, sir.
We there's some work to do. And like I said, that's some wishful thinking, but we got to do our part and continue to do our part.
Yes, sir. And I appreciate you guys today for your authenticity, the conversation. And we know the conversation here is going to end, but the conversation is not going to end as we leave this place here today. So we definitely do appreciate you guys so much. And we thank you for the sacrifices and the impact that each and every one of you guys are doing. Thank you guys so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.